Well, we send our kids back to school with new supplies, clothes, and hopes for a great year. But how do we equip them with confidence in themselves? Author and motivational speaker Mike Robbins says it's all about setting the example. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you back. You were here a little while ago on our earlier show, and you know, you have two girls, 1 and 3, and kids don't know anything but how to be themselves when they're that little.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we grow up and we get maybe knocked down with a few life experiences. How do you connect not just adults but kids with, you know, being confident in themselves?
It's tough, you know, because we do get trained as we grow. The authenticity, the realness of us often gets sort of trained out. And one of the things that I think is so important is for us to model that. You know, the best piece of parenting advice, Renee, I got when my wife was pregnant with our now 3.5-year-old Samantha. My mentor sat me down and he said, listen, the most important job you have with your daughter is to teach her how to love herself. And then I asked him, how do I do that? And he said, you love yourself and you let her see that. So it's easier said than done, but it's really about us modeling that with our kids. And I talk a lot about in my book, Be Yourself, Everyone Else Has Already Taken, that people pay attention to what we do more so than what we say.
Right. And, you know, I know growing up that there was a phrase I heard sometimes, you know, do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
No way. We follow the actions that we see being modeled. So let's talk about some action steps, Mike, because, you know, we can talk all day long about, you know, kids believing in themselves, but, you know, how do we set the example for them to get that?
Well, one of the things I talk about in the book is for us to be more comfortable expressing and admitting our own fears, and this is something we can model with our kids. So when we get scared, even as parents, instead of pretending like we're okay, we can express ourselves, which is one of the principles, and actually admit that we're a little bit scared, which gives our kids permission to do the same thing. It's not about whining and complaining or being insecure. It's actually about letting that fear get expressed, and then we can move through it. Another thing that I talk a lot about, one of the principles in the book, is to be bold. Now, this again is really about dealing with that fear, but being able to go for it anyway. You know, Michael Jordan said, I missed 100% of the shots I never took. So it's being able to teach our children by our own example, but also really encourage them to take risks, and even if they make mistakes, celebrate the courage of actually doing it, as opposed to always being so focused on the result or the outcome that they produce or don't produce.
And I love your idea about the sending an appreciation letter to yourself.
Yeah, now this is one we can do as adults, but we can also teach our children. I love doing this in workshops I talk about in the book, and write a letter of appreciation to yourself. Have your children do this. And then put your name or their name and address on it and a stamp. And then in the case of your children, you can take the letter, or they can give it to a friend or someone and say, listen, sometime in the next year, don't tell me when, drop this letter in the mail. And then the letter comes back and you receive it, and it's from you. And I've done this enough to know it always shows up perfect timing. So imagine your kids opening up a letter from themselves that they actually wrote about what they appreciate about themselves. And again, some of this stuff can even seem a little silly, but like at our house, we go around the table all the time at dinner and talk about what we're grateful for. We call it the grateful game. But getting our kids in a genuine way to celebrate good stuff about themselves and about life, as opposed to just sitting around and talking about how stressful things are, or about the economy, or about how bad things were at work. We're training our children all the time, and we can do it in an authentic but a real positive way.
Also, you're talking about really surrounding yourself with a dream team or positive people. How do we reinforce that in our kids?
Well, it's tough with kids. You know, you and I were talking off the air about, as adults, we can start to notice, oh, this person's negative, that person I don't necessarily want to spend as much time with. With kids, they're at school, they're around whoever seems cool and popular, and one of the things, you know, our parents taught us when we were little, right? Hang out with the good kids, right? But as best as we can, we want to teach our children, again, by example, but also letting them know the more positive people they're around, the more encouraging the people are around them, the more likely they're going to make their dreams and their goals come true. And if there are people that are naysayers or really negative, we start to teach them not to judge those people as much as start to move away from the people that don't make us feel good and we don't feel confident around. And as kids start to understand that discernment, which they actually can if we empower them to, they start making better choices about who they spend their time with.
So this book is so important, and you know, I love the title, you know, Be Yourself, Everybody Else Is Always Taken.
Yes.
It's so amazing, because if as an adult you're getting those lessons and then passing them on to your kids, then, you know, the cycle just keeps repeating itself.
Absolutely, and so much of the time we give this advice to kids, you know, whether they're children or they're teenagers, just be yourself. You know, they graduate from high school, we say, go out in the world and be yourself. But then they watch us, and if we're really honest about it, we're not often ourselves are really authentic. You know, we go to the family gathering and act a certain way and then get in the car and talk to our spouse about Uncle Joe and Aunt Susie and how we don't like them. And so our kids start picking up this inauthentic behavior. And it's not easy, but if we can start to practice being more real and genuine with our children and how we operate in the world, That's the greatest lesson that we can teach them, in addition to all of our wonderful lectures and words of wisdom, is to actually just show them what it looks like to be a real, authentic, vulnerable, not perfect human being.
Thank you so much. We're out of time, but we have free books that we're kind enough to bring for us for our viewers at 11 a.m. on our raffle page, and it's just a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for